How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Boylei Hobby Time. This week I finally broke out my 1 to 72nd scale California gold miners with the intention of building them a mine. I don't think the setting for this diorama is going to be in California. I think it'll be in the Rockies. But the box says that they are from California, so Californians they are. These Californians are going to be inside of a big mine. It's going to be kind of a cross section of a hillside with a shaft and 2 tunnels at different levels, one of which will be co-occupied by a large spider. The hillside itself is going to be made up of 3 layers of XPS insulation foam that I hot glued together. I glued the first 2 layers together and kept the last one separate so that I could carve the shape of the tunnel and the shaft without messing up the foam behind it. Before cutting out the shape of the mine, and in order to keep the hillside itself consistent, I taped all the foam together and I cut out the shape of the hillside with a handheld hot wire cutter. I then used the hot wire and a hobby knife to make sure that the surface looked a little bit more natural. I then removed the tape and I grabbed that front piece with the pattern on it and began cutting out the shape of the mine. After I had cut out all the pieces of foam, I glued them back onto the previous layer of foam, and that is when you could really start to see the mine take shape. I also left a cutout on the back. It's a little ugly because it kind of was an afterthought. That is where I'm going to be putting the holes for the lights and storing all of the electronics. I switched out the tip on the hot wire cutter and began turning the flat foam into a rock wall that had been chipped away by pickaxes and dynamite. And I remembered I have a person in here with a pickaxe, so I needed a wall for him to be chipping away at. And then I used my thumb to scrape away some of the melted, more unnatural looking burn marks. And after that was done, I glued it down to the base and began plotting out the supports. I recently rewatched Luke Towan's gold mine video, and in it, he cuts all of his supports to be press fit into place. I thought that was an awesome idea, so I did the same thing. If you couldn't already tell, this build was heavily inspired by that one, and if you haven't seen that yet, you should definitely go check it out. It's very inspiring. I made a little cover to go over top of the mine shaft, and then I marked out some spots that needed to be drilled out in order to allow the rope to pass through. I also assembled a little head frame out of some more balsa wood. This is going to hold the rope or cable that hoists the cage up and down. If there's one thing that I've learned from Minecraft other than not to dig straight down, it's that mine carts travel best when they're on a track. So I put down some little brass rods onto a piece of masking tape, and then I glued down a bunch of little balsa ties. Once those were all glued together, I carefully peeled off the tape. When I flipped that over, I had a nice little track. I added another track to the bottom of the cage. This is so that the guy could push his cart onto it and bring it up and down with him instead of having to transfer it to something else. I don't know if that's very realistic in mining, but it made sense to me when I did it. Next, I mixed up some paint and Mod Podge and I painted that on the walls. I did this before adding the plaster because I didn't want to interfere with any of the nice texture that I had made on the walls. Once I had mixed up all of the plaster, I covered all the spots that I wanted to have a little bit more texture, and I filled in some of the gaps on the top. Then I glued the head frame Welsh on top, as well as a little box that the hoist will go inside of. I didn't make a hoist because you can't really see inside of this anyways. But the cable will come out and then go down to the cage. And then of course, because this is the Wild Imaginary West, I added some sci-fi-ish greeblies before adding some guitar string cords to run along the walls and connect various elements together, including some control panels for the lift and the lights. And then I attached the cage to the cable. Added a few other little details, including some more wires on the back, and some rubble at the base of the wall that's being chipped away at. Added some sand to the very top, and to where the wall meets the floor. After that, it was time to prime. But before I primed, I actually went to the store and grabbed some spiders. These are made for D&D, but I'm going to be repurposing them for this build. This one came with this gross looking thing, and I removed it from the base. I decided to go with this spider. I liked the legs and the look of it a little bit better. I did have to adjust the legs so it would fit in the tight space, and I knew it was going to be really difficult not to ruin the paint job squishing it in here, so I decided to just put it in here beforehand and paint it all together. After everything was primed, including the little Californians, it was time to start painting. At least subconsciously, I think this diorama was inspired by one of my favorite games, which is Terraria. I absolutely love the soundtrack, and once you beat the wall of flesh and you enter hard mode, the spiders become exponentially more difficult to kill. So I definitely resonate with these miners, at least in some way. I don't think that they're going to be able to come back and pick up their stuff after they respawn, because in this universe, you don't respawn. After I was done painting the mine and the spider, it was time to paint the miners. I did a quick Google search for what are Californians' favorite colors to wear, and the results were inconclusive, but it looked like red was more popular in the north, and blue was more popular along the coast and in all the big cities. Not really sure why, but in the end, I decided to just paint them like normal miners, so it didn't really matter that much. After I had glued the miners in place, it was time to figure out the lights. I punched some holes through the back of the foam, and then ran some nano LEDs with pre-soldered wires. These give off a nice warm glow, which matches the mine very nicely. The wiring is a little bit of a hack job, but I will cover that up with something later. And the last thing to do was to cover all the unpainted surfaces with black 3.0, and I called it good. That is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Huge shout out, as always, to my patrons. You guys are the best. Have an awesome week, everyone. I will see you next time.